indigenous nations' land. And here in northern San Diego County, we're on the Payom land, which is also known as the Luiseños. That's the sort of Spanish colonizers' name for them, but they go by both. And their territory stretches from Carlsbad and Encinitas north along the coast up to like San Luis Obispo, and from the coast east to Palomar Mountain. So it's a vast array of habitats and land that were people live on even today. In the Payom culture, people are not in charge of the environment in a way that sort of more Western worlds think of it. And instead, it's a reciprocal kind of stewardship. The people care for the land, and the land provides for the people. And in this worldview, a really important role is the plant gatherers. And Amy Admire, who's one of our consultants from the Rincon Reservation, is a plant gatherer. And these folks are not like farmers in the sense that we use the word, and that the people have put crops in a particular plot and the crop grows. Instead, they set out to meet plants where plants actually exist. I've done some touring with Amy on the Buena Vista plot of land across the road, where she's like, oh, I haven't met this plant yet. And it's just the most interesting, it's like, it's a person in her world. Haven't met him yet. I have to learn more about him. And so they find plants where they're living and then cultivate them there, trying to enhance their life, enhance their yield, which is the stewardship. It kind of feels like it fits in with what Judd's blurb was, which it's this mutuality and this they never will. If you've read Braiding Sweetgrass, it's very much that attitude, and then that interaction with nature that is just so lovely. And in addition to the Payom, though, San Diego County remains the shared space also of the Kumeyaay, the Cahuilla, and the Cupeño. So all four tribal nations have lands here in our county. So back to you, Deborah. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Tina. Well, I wanted to welcome all of you that are here this evening, and I'm very excited to introduce Judd Curran to you, who is our speaker this evening. I asked Judd to speak when I read about his story, his life experiences, and also his professional background and the skills that he has professionally. And I was really interested in doing something for the group in January to kick off the new year, to inspire us to have a great year and remember, that we are in a wonderful place, San Diego, California, surrounded by nature that we can participate with almost every day of the year in some form. And sometimes I think, I'm from Chicago originally, but I've been here many years, and you get where you're taking it for granted until December and January come, and you see the football games and people sitting in the snow and in below 30-degree temperatures. And you realize, oh my gosh, I get to experience and draw from nature year round, every day if I want to. And so many people in this time have expressed to me the importance that they place in nature when the rest of the world or their lives seem chaotic and out of control. Nature is something that really can soothe your soul. So Judd is going to be talking to us this evening about different avenues and ways to be able to cultivate a relationship with nature. Excuse my hoarseness. I don't know where that's coming from. But I wanted to give you a little bit about his background. He is chair of the Earth Sciences Department at Grossmont College in El Cajon. and has been teaching earth sciences since 1998. He's developed climate change curricula, which is used statewide. He holds an MA as well as BS degrees in geography and certifications in weather forecasting, California Naturalist, Pollinator Steward, and Nature Journaling Educator. And as I talked about during this time of environmental and societal changes, hopefulness can sometimes be elusive. An effective antidote can be cultivated by engaging with nature with humility. Doing so can stimulate our curiosity, creativity, and sustained compassionate attention for the very nature that is part of us. In the presentation, you will learn ways to enhance your awareness of and relationship with the biosphere, examples of native plant gardening, nature journaling, stewardship with local organizations, and participatory science will be presented. Mr. Curran will give an overview of the California Naturalist program, which benefits ecosystems, builds community, and advances positive momentum toward resiliency. So with that, Judd, I will hand it over to you, and I'm anxious to hear your presentation.
Thank you, Deborah, for that wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. And I thank you also for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I'm very excited to connect with those of you that are here and share a little bit about some of the topics that Deborah introduced. I thought I'd kick off this evening with just a question that you can all ponder. And that question is, when was the last time that you experienced awe, and how long ago approximately? And what was the subject of the awe that you experienced? I'll put that question in the chat.
Oh, shit.
In case you can see that. And if you can put an answer in the chat if you want, or you can just think about it and answer the question yourself. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully you all can see the presentation. What you should see is a bluebird. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yes, good. Okay, great. So the last time that I experienced awe, I thought was on Tuesday when I was out in my neighborhood, and I saw this bluebird up close. But then this morning, I experienced awe again, and it was equally as inspiring to me. So I'm not actually going to talk about the bluebird. I'm going to talk about what I saw this morning when I experienced awe. And that was on a simple walk out in my local neighborhood, in very urban downtown, near downtown San Diego. And I was walking the dog and decided to go out along the road near the Balboa Golf Course, the south end of Balboa Park. And there was a little clearing in the natural vegetation, and I decided to veer into that for a moment. And I started noticing some things that I had not noticed in the native vegetation recently. There's a plant that you can see here that's chamise, which is Adenostoma fasciculatum. It's in the rose family. It's very common in the coastal sage scrub around San Diego. And this chamise had this brand new, bright green, vibrant growth of several inches in length. And I assume that's in response to the most recent rains that we've had that have really sort of kickstarted the growth for this season. So I thought that was kind of exciting to see that growth. But then I also started to hear some bird calls. And what you see there, the little gray etching, is the recording, the sound profile of the Buick's wren. And you notice that the profile on the left is very different looking than that which is on the right. And Buick's wrens have such an incredible vocabulary. that the profile on the left, the sound the Buick's wren was making, was actually one I didn't recognize. And I was really captivated by it. It sounded very close. And so I decided to use the Merlin app to record it, which is where this profile came from. And then a little while longer, then I heard a more familiar call from the Buick's wren, which is that profile that's on the right. And so I thought I'd just share this with you as my moment of awe that was quite unexpected that happened this morning when I was on my walk, and eventually got a video of that Buick's wren in the coastal sage scrub. So that's fun. The reason that I point this out, and the reason I asked this question was because we're talking this evening about cultivating a deeper relationship with nature, and what that may look like for you is really slowing down while in nature, and also taking on a different perspective. And so maybe this is something that you can think about trying as we start this new year of 2026. This new perspective the next time you're in those natural spaces. And that's a perspective of slowing down and trying to develop a deeper attention to what's there in the space that you're in. And a way that we can maybe cultivate that is by heightening our awareness of how nature is not simply something that we occasionally elect to engage with, but rather it's something that we're completely a part of, right? We are a part of the biosphere. And so a question we might want to ask this evening is, how can we develop a heightened sense of that? And why might we want to do that? I like to share with my students this example of the gut biome in humans. There are 10 times the number of microbial cells in the human gut than in the entire human body, totaling roughly 100 trillion microbes that include as many as 5,000 different species, weighing over 2 kilograms. And so we have all of this life that's inside us that is helping us process our food, which is where we get our energy. And without that life, we would not exist. And that's just one small example of how dependent we are on the interrelationships of various life within the biosphere. We are part of that system. So to the extent that we can expand our awareness of that, might help us in cultivating that deeper relationship with nature. Now, I recognize that I'm speaking to an organization of bird enthusiasts, and what I'm presenting to you this evening is in that context, understanding that you may already spend quite a bit of time in nature. The first naturalist course that I taught, I had a number of students who were trail guides for Mission Trails Regional Park that had signed up to take my class. And lo and behold, the first field trip that I had organized was to Mission Trails Regional Park. And so I'm thinking to myself, what on earth am I going to teach these folks that work in Mission Trails, that are taking guests, visitors down these trails every day? They know intimately the ins and outs of the various things that are along those trails. How on earth am I going to teach them something new, something different, something they can walk away with and benefit from? But what I quickly realized through teaching the California Naturalist certification course is that there's so much that we're missing when we're in these natural spaces. And there's so much opportunity with a concerted effort to dig deeper into the things that we experience when we're in nature. And so we'll talk more about that in terms of what we did when we were on the trail with those naturalists, with the trail guides, and how you might be able to do that too. Really, it's about adopting a new perspective and doing so with intention. I recently discovered a book when I was in the bookstore called The Call of the Honey Guide, what science tells us about how to live well with the rest of life. And I wanted to just read to you the blurb in the cover. In the woodlands of sub-Saharan Africa, sometime deep in our species past, something strange happened. A bird called out, not to warn others of human presence, but to call attention to herself. Having found a beehive, that bird, called a honey guide, sought human aid to break in. The behavior can seem almost miraculous. How would a bird come to think that people could help her? Isn't life simply bloodier than that? As Rob Dunn argues in The Call of the Honey Guide, it isn't. Nature is red in tooth and claw, but in equal measure, life works together. Cells host even smaller life, wrapped in a web of mutual interdependence. Ants might go to war, but they also tend fungi, aphids, and even trees. And we humans work not just with honey guides, but with yeast, crops, and pets. Ecologists call these beneficial relationships mutualism, and they might be the most important forces in the evolution of life. We humans often act as though we are alone, independent from the rest of life. As The Call of the Honey Guide shows, we are not. It's a call to action for a more beneficent, less lonely future. So we may be a collective of people already passionate about nature and various elements of it. However, cultivating a keen and heightened awareness of our belonging as part of nature and our dependence on life that surrounds us creates a profound and deeper connection that can engage curiosity and wonder in new and positive ways. It can promote stewardship, elevate values of compassion, cooperation, solidarity, and even reciprocity. And it can support conservation. It can also just simply really make you feel good. Another book that I came across recently from a UC Berkeley professor, Dr. Keltner, answers the question, how can we live the good life? In his 2023 book called Awe, The New Science of Everyday Wonder. And so I wanted to read an excerpt from this book to you. How can we live the good life? One enlivened by joy and community and meaning that brings us a sense of worth and belonging and strengthens the people and natural environments around us. Now, 20 years into teaching happiness, I have the answer. Find awe. Awe is the emotion we experience when we encounter vast mysteries that we don't understand. Why would I recommend that you find happiness in an emotion that is so fleeting and evanescent? A feeling so elusive that it resists simple description. That requires the unexpected and moves us towards mystery and the unknown rather than what is certain and easy. Because we can find awe anywhere. And because doing so doesn't require money or the burning of fossil fuels or even much time. Our research suggests that just a couple of minutes a day will do. Because we have a basic need for awe wired into our brains and bodies. Finding awe is easy if we just take a moment and wonder. Because all of us, no matter what our background, can find our own meaningful path to awe. Because brief moments of awe are as good for your mind and body as anything you might do. Stimulating curiosity through sustained compassionate attention, a definition of love, for the very nature that we are part of, can nurture the practice of experiencing and finding awe. Author Lily Taylor, in her book, Turning to Birds, The Power of Beauty and Noticing, encourages mindfulness, inviting readers to be present and fully engaged with the world around them, to see the world through new eyes, and to find joy in the most unexpected places. Paying a closer attention and expanding your curiosity and finding wonder and awe stimulates and fires your brain in positive ways. It's really good for brain health. It reduces anxiety. It promotes better mental health. And so can we heighten our awareness of our belonging to nature and connect to a community of like-minded people in doing the same? A community that cares for life that surrounds us, all life, including each other. Doing so can promote stewardship and conservation too, which are some of the guiding principles of our California Naturalist program. So I'm going to share a few personal examples of how I have found awe daily in my life, deepening my relationship with nature, and suggest an opportunity that you can engage with to do the same. I don't assume that you haven't already found awe, at least sometimes. The question we're trying to answer is, how can you do more of that? I think the short answer can be to spend more time with focused attention in nature. And here are some ways that I've done that and opportunities for you as well. By slowing down, paying attention, and thus stimulating curiosity, creativity, and wonder. I'm giving some examples of developing a relationship with native plants, doing some nature journaling, stewardship, and education to include those above in the California Naturalist Certification Program. So the first example involving native plants, this is a toyon, which is California holly, otherwise known as Heteromeles arbustifolia, and it's in the rose family. This is a mature specimen that was growing in my front yard after several years of doing some native plant landscaping. I did a project. And I want to just tell you this particular story because of how transformative it was in so many ways in drawing me in closer to nature. This is a map showing you basically downtown San Diego. You see on the lower left is Coronado, the Coronado Bridge connecting to the mainland. There's I-5. And from the east coming in off of the right side is Interstate 94. The little red square and the arrow was my house where this project was taking place. Zooming in closer, you can see it's very urban, right near downtown San Diego, surrounded by concrete and freeways, right there near the intersection of the 94 and 5 freeways. And so my goal in planting native plants was really, what a lot of people look for when they're thinking about doing native plant landscaping. Maybe just, replacing the weeds, cooling down the environment, having something that's low maintenance, and also low water consumption. Those initially were the goals of this project. And this house that we just recently sold, actually, was built in 1893 in an older neighborhood of Golden Hill. And you can see out front, there's some fake grass there. That's AstroTurf that was there from the previous owners, and that's still there today. And then surrounding the wraparound porch is a large monoculture hedge, a non-native hedge. And then down in front in the public space on either side of the sidewalk are some small strips of land, we call them parkways, that were wiregrass, weeds, very compacted dirt, and not much else. And so this was going to be the subject area of this redesign of doing some native plantings. This includes not only in the front of the house, but also along the side of the house here along F Street. It's about 100 feet of length there along the sidewalk on F Street and about 50 feet in the front. And so this is kind of what it looked like before we got started. It was wiregrass. It was very compacted. There wasn't much life in the soil in terms of microbes or other beneficial life that could support plant growth. And so it was a tremendous undertaking just to turn the dirt back into soil, to remove the weeds and to get started. We enlisted some help from our girls, and I don't know that they were much help. It was hard to, herd chickens on F Street, but they did their best nonetheless. And so we really just started one section at a time as we got started, just to see if we could do it. And we spent a lot of time working on the soil and carefully observing cycles and the changes and the successes and the failures, the things that would grow and the things that wouldn't. And I attributed some of our initial failures to the fact that the soil was in such bad shape. And so we needed to learn about the soil biome and the life there and how to undo the soil compaction of the past and reintroduce microbial life in the soil and to establish mycorrhizal networks as these plants began to connect and provide for each other. And so this took time, but it worked. And like I said, we just did sections at a time, and we tried to introduce a great diversity of plants so that we would have things blooming at all times of year, different plants blooming at different times of year. So there was always something that looked good. This is just a short list of some of those plants that we put in. And then eventually we realized that, native plants, they do like to be irrigated, especially as they're getting established. And dragging hoses out across the sidewalk when people are trying to go by wasn't all that practical. So eventually I started digging and putting in some irrigation to support the initial growth. Over time, as the plants grew, though, that irrigation became less and less important. But it is important initially in getting the plants established. What this did as I was working through, this garden was, and this process was really, it put me out in front in the public space where my neighbors were walking by. And I was not only being drawn closer into nature and to these plants and trying to get them to grow, but I was also being drawn closer into my community. Not intentionally so. I just happened to be there, and people would stop and they would talk and they'd tell me what was going on, and they would tell me how they appreciated a particular plant or a smell that was coming from the garden. And so it was really amazing that it was connecting me in with my own community as much as it was connecting me in with the biosphere of these plants. The plants started to bloom and grow, and it eventually blew us away in terms of the transformation that took place and how beautiful it was, especially in the springtime, but even at all times of year. And so it worked. And the plants eventually started to propagate and reproduce on their own. So I had new California buckwheats popping up here and there, or San Diego sunflowers. And some of the things that I kept trying over and over to get to grow in this particular place that continued to fail were just replaced by the natural propagation of those plants that were successful. It seemed like those were the ones that needed to be there at that particular time. And so it was okay. It ended up working. And so I shifted my efforts eventually to managing this natural propagation as things were popping up even in the middle of the street, in the cracks, as the plants began to reproduce and multiply. The success of plant growth began providing food and resources, pollen and nectar and berries and acorns and habitat for other organisms, which was really also transformative. I'm just trying to get caught up here. There we go. Eventually, it was so exciting the day that we were discovering acorns on our coast live oak trees that we put right there in between the street and the sidewalk. And they were hugely successful. our neighbor nearby, I think, was encouraged by seeing this kind of transformation from weeds into these plants to remove the weeds from their parkway as well. But they unfortunately they took a different approach. This was their version of landscaping, and I appreciate what they were trying to do. Unfortunately, something like this is very sterile. And the non-native fountain grass is a problematic plant that reseeds itself everywhere. It provides virtually nothing for any other form of life. I walked by this area the other day, and there was a guy on his knees pulling the weeds out of the gravel. And I felt kind of bad for him because it was just a completely different approach. What happened as our landscaping matured was, as I mentioned before, it started to provide for other organisms. And so this is really what, to me was so eye-opening. This connection, this tiny little strips of land in this densely urban area. And I never really thought that it would attract other life from other places in any sort of significant way or noticeable way. But that really did start to happen, and in a significant way. I'm going to switch here. There we go. Okay. And so we started to see the naturalized European honeybee, but we also started to see all kinds of other pollinators coming in. And I've lived my whole life in San Diego, and there were pollinators that I had never seen before in my entire life. And I don't know if that's because I wasn't paying attention before. I wasn't as closely connected to this new natural space as other spaces I've been in, or because I was just paying closer attention. But metallic green bees and different pollinators and from butterflies to flies to wasps to bumblebees right there on F Street and 22nd. These are all photographs from this space, from this garden that I've taken. So it was incredible. And there was a buzz that was going on at all times of year. If the baccharis was blooming in the fall, there was always things that you could go see that were buzzing around it on a particular day. And in the springtime, it was, the California sunflowers or the Matilaha poppies that were drawing in different pollinators. So it was just amazing how much life descended into this tiny little space that we had.
Back to me, so.
But then something else started to happen. And that was that the pollinators and the insects that were there started to reproduce in this space. And so we started to see monarchs and praying mantis. This praying mantis on the left was literally at our window pane during Thanksgiving looking in, and it was the talk of the family, that was there as to whether it was staring at the mashed potatoes or the stuffing that was on the table. It was really funny. And then eventually we found on the right, that's an egg sac from a praying mantis. So they were reproducing in our native garden. But we then started to see an increase in the insects that were preying on other insects, like the garden spiders, the orb weaver that you see here on the left. And so this tremendous sort of micro ecosystem of insects and pollinators coming in for the resources that we have provided, it created the habitat for these organisms as well. And then if that wasn't exciting and awe-producing enough, we started to see and notice more and different birds coming in. this kingbird spent a few days harvesting pollinators from the garden. And we would watch it swoop down and grab bees or other pollinators from the plants and then go back up to the tree and perch on it. We saw birds come in to harvest the cabbage worms off of our vegetable garden. We didn't ever use pesticides. And it became easier over time that we weren't doing those kinds of things because the organisms that were coming into our space that we had brought in through the encouragement by introducing these plants, they were doing the work. We eventually had a Cooper's hawk regularly coming in because we also had a water feature and it would come to drink. It may have also been preying on some of the birds that were there. I don't know. But I wonder if that was something that was happening. And so it was really, this idea of, oh, we should get a hummingbird feeder, and then realizing, wait, we have so many hummingbird feeders in our garden now that we don't actually have to fill one with sugar water anymore. And other birds that, for us were less common that we were excited about, like the Bullock's oriole. We had seen other more common hooded orioles in our yard, but the grosbeak and the flock of bush tits that would regularly come in and forage the insects from the undersides of our oak leaves, and then move into our shrubs as well. They were so fun to watch. Eventually, some of these birds made home in our yard. This birdhouse was idle for about a decade from the time we hung it up. No one was interested. But suddenly a pair of Buick's wrens found it to be their home. And I have to think that creating that natural enriched space with all kinds of resources was partly encouraging that. We also saw cedar waxwings come in, and they would spend a few days in the jacaranda tree in our neighbor's yard, but they would fly down into our yard to forage off of the toyon when it was producing berries. And so this was right off of our porch. We had a front row seat to watch the cedar waxwings feeding on our toyon. And so this was amazing that we were, without planning to do this, we were giving back. There was this sense of reciprocity that what we had created was this incredible, but so small, yet incredibly valuable space for the life that surrounded us. The life that surrounded us that we didn't even know was there. And eventually mammals were showing up, and we had possums and we had skunks, and we sold that property in May, but we still have regular visits to this garden because it surrounds the sidewalk. It's in the public space. And on a recent visit in the evening, we were shocked to see a coyote sitting on the front lawn, lifting its back leg up and scratching its head and yawning and just kind of hanging out there as if it was in its most comfortable home, which seems so out of place in this densely urban area. Yet it almost was sending a message to us. And it was really, really amazing. And so this experience that we had also was, again, as I mentioned before, it was really connecting us with the community around us. And people would stop on a hot summer day under the coast live oak, now mature enough to provide dense shade over a small section of the sidewalk. And while pausing to receive the gift of the coast live oak, they began noticing the flowers, the smells, the pollinators, They were touching the plants and feeling the texture of the black sage leaves. And as I was out in the garden, anyone passing by would always stop to talk. The garden became a mechanism to connect with the community. People commented on how they planned their walks to incorporate passing through this garden, that the smells reminded them of their hikes at Mission Trails Regional Park and how much they loved it. The sustained, compassionate attention that we gave to this space was reciprocated by the love that the community expressed in return, and the deeper connections that we made with the people and the organisms around us as well. It really was transformative. I want to share with you a passage from the book called The Serviceberry, which is written by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Somebody mentioned earlier about the book Braiding Sweetgrass, which is another one of her books that is a little bit more well known. From The Serviceberry. The serviceberries show us another model, one based on reciprocity rather than accumulation, where wealth and security come from the quality of our relationships, not from the illusion of self-sufficiency. Without gift relationships with bees and birds, the serviceberries would disappear from the planet. Even if they hoarded abundance, perching atop the wealth ladder, they would not save themselves from the fate of extinction if their partners did not share in that abundance. Hoarding won't save us either. All flourishing is mutual. As I watch the robins and cedar waxwings fill their bellies, I see a gift economy in which abundance is stored in the belly of my brother. Supporting a thriving bird community is essential to the well-being of the serviceberry and everyone else up and down the food chain. That seems especially important to an immobile, long-lived being like a tree who can't run away from ruptured relationships. Thriving is possible only if you have nurtured strong bonds with your community. And so this example that I've shared with you, I think is important because, even if you're not really into native plants, or maybe you don't have a space that you want to do gardening in, or you're just not into gardening, I think that there's a more important takeaway that is spending time in nature with attention can really be transformative, right? And if native plants are of interest to you, there are so many ways that you can engage with that. Even if you don't have a space that you can plant in the ground, I've seen so many stories of native plants in pots that have done amazing things. And then we also have all these amazing native plant gardens in our surrounding areas that are open for us to share, including, I recently learned, with the Buena Vista Nature Center. So lots of opportunity to engage in the natural surroundings in this way, as well as connecting with others in developing that community. Okay, another example that I wanted to share with you is about nature journaling. And nature journaling, I think, provides a similar opportunity in that it invites us to slow down. It's a more focused approach to connecting more deeply with the very nature that's a part of us and that surrounds us. Engaging in the practice can reduce anxiety and stress, and it can promote better mental health and emotional well-being. It benefits us and other living things as well. It can, in the process, it can reveal your thought process and facilitate metacognition, and also create a rich documented account of something that you've experienced that you can revisit. It aids in making connections between observed phenomena, and it helps in revealing patterns. provides the opportunity to see things you might otherwise miss. Nature journaling slows you down to the pace of wonder. Okay. I'm going to switch. 1 second. There we go. Okay. So the focus of nature journaling is to promote attention, curiosity, and creativity. And we can do that through 3 simple prompts. Those prompts are I notice, I wonder, and it reminds me of. We can capture what we experience in a journal, on a page, in a variety of different ways. It could be just simply writing down words, sentences, narrating to yourself some things that you're experiencing. It could be using pictures by drawing or numbers. Maybe you're measuring something, making an account of how long something has been here or how many things are visiting, how many bees are visiting a particular flower. These kinds of activities slow you down and encourage you to notice more than you would otherwise have done. I've got an arrow here pointing to this little brochure the student's using to aid in her nature journaling. I want to show you what that is. Nature journaling is using words, pictures, and numbers to collect and record your natural observations, questions, and connections, and explanations in a notebook. This fun and powerful practice helps you slow down, pay attention, notice more, and get curious about the wonder and beauty around you. The basics of nature journaling is using words, pictures, and numbers to record things that you notice, things that you wonder about that can stimulate curiosity, and things that you might be reminded of in your own personal experiences as you engage with the nature around you. This brochure and this information comes from the Wild Wonder organization. That you can find and download a free copy of this at wildwonder.org. They also have lots of amazing resources. I'm going to show you an example of a nature journal that I did recently. I was up at Pacificacho State Park in the fall, and I was having so much fun watching the Pacific acorn woodpeckers. And I decided to do a nature journal on the woodpecker. And what's so important about engaging with the nature journal as a mechanism to slow you down and to focus your attention more acutely is not what ends up on the page, but rather your experience and your process in putting that information on the page. Of course, whatever exists in your journal can also be a rich history that you can reflect back on. And especially if you revisit a place over and over again, it can be fun to see how things are changing through the seasons. But in this case, I'm using those prompts, I notice and I wonder, and it reminds me of, to really just sort of capture my experience and to think more deeply as I'm there in the forest. And in order to do this, it requires that I slow down and I spend more time in this space. I might be inclined when I visit a natural place to, map out what the trails are and try to figure out, okay, if I do this trail, I might have enough time to go over here and see this other trail too, right? And so you end up just running around and you're trying to get as much in as you can. And it's really hard to develop deep memories and experiences in that sort of approach to engaging with nature. There's certainly nothing wrong with that. I do that all the time. But when I sit down and I spend time in a spot and really try to see more and pay attention more, it seems for me to be so much more enriching. And research shows that it stimulates your brain in ways that are really good for your mental health. Here's another example. The tree that's on the left, you see, has a blue-green cast. And the acorn that's on the left in my hand came from that tree. The tree that's on the right is more of a yellow-green cast, brighter green. And the acorn on the right came from that tree. I decided to do a nature journal entry about these acorns and the trees they came from. So I captured details about the leaf shape, the color, the margin, whether it had teeth, the texture of the caps of the acorns and their shape. I measured the size of them. This was so much fun. And while I was doing this, I was noticing other things that were there that I probably would have missed. Certain bird calls, and this interaction between a squirrel and an acorn woodpecker that was quite fun to watch. Things that if I had just walked through this area, I would have missed. So again, it's that process of nature journaling that can enrich your experience in a place way beyond what you might expect. And it was this activity that I was doing with those trail guides at that first field trip in Mission Trails when they reported back to me that their experience was so much more enriching than they had ever experienced before on that trail they had been down with visitors they had led down that trail many times. And so it was then that I knew that nature journaling is a powerful mechanism to really help folks develop that deeper relationship with nature. There's lots of things that you can do with a nature journal that are really fun. You can record what's happening through time and do like a time scale. You could look at how things are changing as the slope changes when you go down a trail. In the changing slope, does the vegetation change? What kinds of species are you seeing? There's so many questions that one could ask. And there's so much curiosity that can come from engaging with a nature journal. So these are just some samples that I thought would be fun to share with you. Oops. Let's see. Looking at oak hybridization between Quercus engelmannii, the Engelmann oak, and the scrub oak in the same oak section, and a really neat hybrid that you could really see some of the characteristics of both parent species in the hybrid there at the Crest Ridge Ecological Reserve. Wonderful place if you ever get a chance to go if you haven't been. It's really fun. And my students that are in the California Naturalist certification course are engaging in nature journaling as part of the class. And they too are having much deeper connections with nature than they've experienced before. The feedback that I'm getting is really fun. It's really positive. And it's the very type of activity that we desperately need now more than ever. At a time when there's so much to worry about in the world, to be able to be surrounded by the very life that's part of that biosphere that you're connected to connect yourself to that can really help reduce some of the anxiety and to help in moving forward. Here's one more. You can make charts and your journals can be full of words. If you were like me for most of my life, I would always say, oh, I'm not an artist. Don't ask me to draw anything other than stick figures and a tree that looks like broccoli. That's about all I could do. It's a practice like anything. And the more you do it, you can have fun with it. You can surprise yourself. And so now I know to say that I'm not an artist yet, but I'm getting there, and I'm having fun playing with using colored pencil and watercolor to try to represent what's there around me. And there's all kinds of great instruction that's available for free through the Wild Wonder organization to help you get started, if that's something you're interested in. Okay, so back to the garden. If if you are into spending a lot of time in your own garden, your own space, a nature journal can complement that in wonderful ways. And so, you don't have to go far to experience nature and to do nature journaling. You could just create a journal that's just about what's right outside in your backyard or in your garden. And someone who's done that in an amazing way is Amy Tan. If you haven't seen her book, The Backyard Bird Chronicles, it's a fantastic illustration of how deeply connected one can get with the very nature that's right out there, their back door. In her case, in really watching birds and spending lots of time interacting with and connecting with the birds that were in her yard, and then journaling that using beautiful illustrations. I recently took a trip up to the Delta region of California and got a chance to take a look at some sandhill cranes. The trip was to go watch the sandhill cranes in the Cosumnes River Preserve, and then also on North Staten Island Road, which is a famous place to go to watch them. And if I reflecting back on that experience, I feel like if it had been the type of thing I usually would do, which is kind of drive down the road and sort of see where the cranes are, and then maybe try to follow them and sort of be chasing the cranes around the Delta all day long, I would not have had the experience that I had, which was very different. And that was in going with this group of folks, this wonderful group of folks that are into nature journaling. We literally got out of our cars and just put our stools or chairs down or blankets on the grass and parked ourselves in one spot. And the birds came and went, and they came and went. And by dusk, there were thousands upon thousands of birds that were descending into the area. And the memories that I have of learning how to draw the sandhill crane, learning about some of the specific details, like this, what looks like a large tail is actually not its tail at all. It's this, they call it a bustle, and it's this collection of tertial feathers that's really part of its wings, massive wings that come out. These are all details that I probably wouldn't have noticed had I not been with these folks who really spent some time talking about the bird and by way of how to draw it. But really, it was about learning about the details of this special species. And it wasn't long after that I was in the Camas Wildlife Refuge in Idaho. And lo and behold, sandhill cranes go flying over our head. And I don't think I would have even noticed or recognized them had it not been for this day that I spent in the Delta, observing them and journaling them in great detail. And, you spend enough time doing some journaling in nature, nature comes to you, right? And so I've had wonderful experiences with that, parking myself in a place and getting out my little paints and having fun journaling and just seeing what happens in the process. And the last thing that I wanted to mention, and I'll try to do this briefly because I know we're getting into the 8 o'clock mark, is stewardship is another amazing, fantastic way to engage with nature while engaging with each other. And there are so many opportunities to do that. Whether you're doing conservation or restoration or other forms of care for the natural spaces that surround us, it all feels really good. And especially when you're doing it with others, there's this sense of community helping each other and helping nature, and it can be so rewarding. In the California Naturalist Certification Program, stewardship is part of the course, and we provide opportunity for students to find a way to connect with another organization or to somehow create a stewardship project that could involve educating others about nature or doing restoration or conservation work. And so we've had some really neat projects that students have done related to that. this fun little native plant scavenger hunt that this participant created to help people who visit the Agua Hedionda Lagoon to engage more with what's around them while they're there. Or these other little miniature brochures, they call them zines, like magazines, to detail out the insects and the birds of a particular site that could be made freely available to folks who visit. Students have gotten involved in climate justice related stewardship projects. We had one working on the Winter Solstice Observatory atop Coles Mountain in San Diego. And so all kinds of amazing work. And what's fun is, regardless of how these students are engaging with the communities they're working with in nature, when they come back and share their stories, it's so profound, the impact that they're having, not only in the work they're doing in nature, but the impact they're having on themselves in what they're learning and experiencing. Laura developed this amazing wingspan board that she could use while she works at Torrey Pines to inspire kids when they come to visit Torrey Pines. They can hold their arms out to see what their wingspan matches. And it was just such a fun, creative way to engage people more with the natural world when they come to visit it. So these are the kinds of examples of stewardship projects that students have done as part of the California Naturalist certification program. Of course, you can do stewardship on your own without any sort of affiliation with the California Naturalist program. But I just wanted to mention that the University of California Naturalist program is a way to sort of tie all of these things together that we've been talking about. Because the goal of the California Naturalist certification program is to develop a citizenry of people who understand their connectivity to nature. And in doing so, then they're more likely to want to conserve it and want to give some of their time in doing that. And so in the California Naturalist certification program, we learn about the natural history of California. And we also spend time in natural spaces where we do nature journaling. We include a stewardship project, and we help participants get connected with local organizations to do stewardship as well. So learning about nature, spending time, slowing down in nature, and really focusing in on developing greater attention can all be important ways in which we can help each other as part of the biosphere. And so I was so delighted when I saw your newsletter that not only was I the guest speaker for January, but also that you have this wonderful nature journaling opportunity that's happening. And I think that's once a month with Barbara Swanson. And you also have a nature center garden crew that's doing wonderful things there in the Buena Vista Nature Preserve. And you even have your own California Naturalist certification course that's taught by Lisa and Jimmy. And that's the registration's open. And I think that course is structured, well, there it is, 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday nights at the Nature Center from March 3rd to May 5th. The links here include at the very bottom the University of California Environmental Stewards Program link, where you can see all of the California Naturalist courses that are being offered throughout the state. Grossmont College, where I teach, is we offer one course every semester, so the spring semester and the fall semester. Palomar College offers one course in the spring, and then of course the through Preserve California and Buena Vista, you have your course that's starting here soon in March. And then there's one other one that's out in the desert that the Ansbrago Desert Foundation offers. If you're not immediately in the San Diego area, there are other courses offered in all kinds of wonderful places throughout the state. And if you wanted to spend a week in Yosemite earning your California Naturalist certification, you absolutely could do that. So you're not restricted to those course offerings that are in your local area. You can go anywhere. We've had some participants that have participated in more than one course, because each course in its own area has a focused specialty in the natural spaces that are in that particular region. So you get a little something different out of each one. And that is the end of my presentation. So thank you all for listening and being here tonight. And I hope that this was inspiring for you and maybe provide some opportunity for some new perspective in 2026. And if you would like to answer if you have any questions you'd like me to answer, I'm happy to do that.
Well, thank you very much. That was just fantastic, Judd. I really, really appreciate it. There was so much information. And if you don't mind, I have a question, and then maybe we can see if others might have put questions in the chat, or if they have questions. I just wanted to ask you is over what period of time did you develop your native garden? I'm sure you went on longer than what. I guess my question is, when did you first notice, oh, this is really flourishing? This is really something to behold, because those pictures were just unbelievable.
Thank you. Yeah. I did it in segments. So there were those various little parkway, installations that I did. So the first one that I did was, I think, around 2017, 2018. And once I saw that it was starting to take hold and I could figure out what I needed to do, then I started to expand it. Really by like 2022, the majority of it was done and was maturing. Yeah, so it was kind of over that span of time, but
Yeah.
it didn't take that long to do it. Like if somebody were to go in and hire a landscaper to do it all in a month, then it would probably really start getting to that mature stage after a couple of years. It didn't take long. Even the coast live oaks, which we think about oaks as growing really slow,
Right.
they actually grow really fast for the first 20 years or so.
Oh,
And so we were getting some wonderful shade after about 5 years of
wow.
those being put in. Yeah.
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 That's just
So,
phenomenal.
yeah.
I'm sure that was a selling point for the house too, your garden.
I think so. I mean, I was talking it up. So
Yeah, I'm sure.
and I'm so happy to see that the new owners appreciate it and that it's still there. So, yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Well, this is Mary. I just have a comment. I really enjoyed your presentation. Kind of learned a few more things today I didn't know, but on your nature journaling, I haven't really done much of that. My mother used to do poetry about different times of the year, like when the robins in the spring and stuff blooming. But in birding, we sometimes have stuff we call I thought this gentleman Gary Nunn he is always talking about patch birding, and it's like pick a spot, whether it's at a park or it could just be your own backyard, and just keep track of stuff in your patch, and for me it would be my yard and my birds. And I was thinking, maybe that's an idea that I should start doing. I mean, this is I've been here for a long time and it's an established house, but I've never really kept track of everything on a yearly basis, and I probably should. Even even just the plants in my yard, of just when things occur. And which, I mean, I'm kind of aware of the birds that come and go. Um, but yeah, I'd never really thought about that as far as the plants go. So that might be, that's, as you said, inspiring. So thank you. That was very interesting.
Well, thank you, Mary. Thank you for the compliment. And yes, oh, it would be so amazing if you started that practice in your garden. I really think there's a lot of fun that can happen when you pick a specific spot, because what you're going to see are things that might be there often, but then things that come and go. And it can stimulate all kinds of questions and curiosity about, was that just a transient thing, or is it a seasonal thing? Is it a migratory thing? Is it, there's so much fun that can come from spending time and doing, detailed observations. And if it's something that I would encourage poetry too. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't even mention that before, but I'm glad you did, because it's so fun to include poetry in your nature journals, to kind of capture some of what you're seeing. But I'll just share my screen just for a second. If you're not familiar with John Muir Laws, I mean, he wrote like the Laws Guide to Sierra Nevada Birds, for example, but he illustrated it. And he has this amazing set of free videos on how to draw everything you could possibly imagine, from like how to draw yellow-rumped warblers to how to draw, bush tits or trees or mushrooms, and he really does it in a way that is accessible, and very easy to get started if you would describe yourself as having little skill in, sketching or whatnot, like I did. This is such a wonderful resource to help encourage you to get started. And he also has information about like the tools that would be a good starting point that you could use, the type of pencils or journal or things that are fun to play with.
Yeah, I think the thing about nature journaling is a lot of times it's tough to take that first step and to just sit down with pen and paper or crayons and paper. But once you get into that position and that mindset, and especially in your yard, I think that's a wonderful place to do nature journaling, because you're there. It's a set point, and that's what it really pays to sit and for a period of time in the same spot, and then watch how it changes over time. Even in a day, the light changes, and the activity of the animals is different at different times of the day. But I have been with Barbara to do nature journaling in Encinitas, and it was a wonderful experience. But again, it's getting there and making the time and saying, okay, this Sunday, that's what I'm going to do. But she is very dedicated to it, and I think it's another good way to get started with it.
Yeah, great.
I agree. If anybody up, in North County, or Mary, you're welcome to come on up. But it's just the nature journaling group is just a great way to intentionally set aside that time in your busy day. And for me, it's the best meditation around for me personally, because I just get in this zone. And before I know it, an hour and a half has gone by, and I have to set my alarm, because I would just get lost in a time warp. It's so fun.
Yeah.
Also, really quick, while I'm yakking, is for the getting connected to nature. If you haven't, I found it, my copy. Keep looking up. Whoops. there we go, this way. Keep Looking Up by Tama Watts is another great one. She's a local naturalist and really helps you. It's kind of this book is kind of a workshop in and of itself, because there's places to journal and to connect with your thoughts on nature and growth and mindfulness. So she's also just a wonderful person too. I really like her.
Thank you, Patty. I'm not familiar with that book, but I just wrote it down, so I'm going to check that one out.
And Judd,
And
thank you
the
so
author's
much.
last name is Watts, Patty?
Yeah, Watts,
Watts.
W-A-T-T-S, Tama Watts.
Tama.
And Judd, thank you so much for this presentation.
Yes.
Really, really enjoyed it.
It's very heartwarming too. I feel great.
Great. I'm happy to do it. Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, I hope that it was inspiring, and you can find some ways to get out there and spend some more time in nature. And I think back to what Docker said about in the book Awe, which you can't really see it there. That the awe is really important for us to experience, and it actually takes a concerted effort to experience it, to look for it. I mean, other than when you go to Yosemite, maybe in your daily life, we can be finding it, and it's important to try to do that because it's really good for your overall health. So I'm inspired by his book to try to do that more. And I think there's lots of opportunities, especially in San Diego, where we can do that. We live in the most biodiverse place in America, and there's so much to see here. So just have to look.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize, because Patty, I think you were on Salton Sea, and Phyllis, as you had in your journal, Judd, about your trip up with the sandhill cranes, and we saw some out at the Salton Sea this weekend. But I didn't realize that red patch is not feathers; it's just they're bald. I didn't realize that till I read that as you were doing your presentation. I thought they had a bunch of red feathers, like the parrots and stuff. But so
they're balls, did you say?
They don't
They're
have
bald.
any. They don't have any feathers.
Oh, they're bald.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's not feathers that are creating that red patch on there.
Oh, I thought it was feathers.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
That was definitely an awe moment for me when I was there in the Delta. Yeah, I didn't know that either. And, it was so fun to learn that, but also then to kind of put in a little bit of red there on their head and think about how that's like what you would see on a condor. It's not feathers at all. It's a bald spot. And I learned later that in certain activities, it will actually blush. And so it's a more intense red, depending upon how the birds are interacting with each other. I can't remember exactly what prompts that, but yeah, they can sort of have this sort of blushing effect that can really sort of intensify the redness of that spot. So yeah, it's kind of neat. Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a good evening, and I will just remind you of the next speaker presentation is February 18th, and Ben Hardy is going to be talking to us about red-legged frogs. So completely different subject, kind of a subset of your subject.
That sounds fun. And I'm now a member, so I might just be there.
Great.
Yeah.
Good.
So.
That would be wonderful. Well, thanks a lot.
Yep. Thank you all.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Deborah.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.